To welcome new committee member and Pinellas County Commissioner Chris Scherer to the committee. Welcome.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that.
And a huge congratulations goes out to our Vice Chair Barb on her appointment by the Governor to the Florida Transportation Commission. That's great news.
That is huge.
So now let's go around the room and introduce the other board members. We'll start with Brad.
Hello, I am Brad Miller. I'm the CEO of PSTA. Good morning.
Good morning.
Barb.
Oh, I'm sorry. Barb Hazelden, the County Commission appointee.
Just Chris Shear, how are y'all this morning?
Tom Reed again.
Max McCann, St. Petersburg Citizen Representative.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Good morning. Now's the time for public comment. Are there any members of the public that have something that they wish to speak about? Hearing none, I will close public comment. On the action items, I need a motion to approve the January 22nd meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. PSTA's auditing services procurement evaluation. Okay, one unique function of the PSTA, we're gonna get our good guy Al, is we select the auditing firm the PSTA contracts to do the required audit. And Al Burns, our recently returned procurement director, will outline the proposal. Al, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too, sir. Good morning, Finance Committee members. My name is Al Burns. I'm your highly motivated procurement director, and I am so grateful and thankful to be back. This morning, I'm bringing to you an action item. I apologize. I'm bringing before you an action item for Audit Selection Committee Evaluation Criteria. The action is recommend approval of the evaluation criteria for the auditing services RFP 25-240381. This is a unique procurement, and I want to thank you and tell you how grateful I am that you all have agreed to serve on the evaluation committee for this solicitation. This is excuse me. Just give you a little bit of background, we are completing our current contract with the firm Cherry Bekaert at the end of April. Cherry Bekaert has been doing an outstanding job for us in the finance team. However, we are required to go back out by Florida statute for auditing services. As Debbie often says, we need a fresh set of eyes to look at our finances and things of that nature on the audit team. Even going through this process, if we were to hire or select Cherry Bekaert again, oftentimes they bring a new lineup or a new team or new members from their firm to do the audit so they can have a fresh set of eyes on it. They don't typically have the same people that did the audit over the course of the last 5 years continue that process under a new contract. So the new RFP is for financial audit services, required National Transit Database agreed upon procedures, and optional elements of unpredictability. What that last one means is that oftentimes Debbie will have, during my tenure here, Debbie's had them look at, for example, our IT infrastructure to see if we're vulnerable, and different things that might be not traditionally audited, but something that is, as it says, unpredictability. The Florida legislation, like I said, it requires us to go through this process. And that's the Florida statute up there that talks 218.3912B. Mr. Chair and Finance Committee members, I want to tell you that this process has been thoroughly vetted with Brian Miller Olive, or BMO, our general counsel, and they have approved what I'm bringing before you this morning. On this slide right here, it goes in further detail that talks about exactly what your roles are and what your roles are. Is to establish the evaluation criteria, which is critical on the selecting of an auditing firm. Rank and recommend no fewer than 3 firms. And from there, we'll make that recommendation to the board of directors for their approval. But have no fear. Have no fear, selection committee members. We're gonna give you some help. And the help that we're gonna give you is in the form of advisors. These advisors are subject matter experts. Amy Davis from Pinellas County. Vince, I don't wanna say the last name because I'll butcher it. Vince from Seminole, from the city of Seminole. And Rebecca from the city of Largo. Some of these names may be familiar to you. And they're considered subject matter experts in the accounting area, and they have performed or are currently performing different finance roles in their respective organization. This is the proposal process and timeline. I am gonna get to know you. I'm gonna get to know you, and you're gonna have my contact information, and Mr. Chair and Evaluation Committee members, I just wanna tell you that at any time, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Now, I know you're familiar with this process, and so I have no doubt, but if you have any questions, I can't stress to you enough that I am here, available for you, through this process. To highlight a couple key dates. Today, we're establishing the evaluation criteria. From here, we'll take this action item to the board of directors, and then from there, hopefully it'll be unanimously approved, and then we'll release the solicitation. The pre-proposal conference is scheduled right now for the 27th. March 18th, proposals are due, and I'll familiarize you, and my team will be familiarizing you with the portal that we'll be using, which is Bonfire. On the 19th, we're gonna have evaluation committee meeting, member training. I am gonna walk you through the process of evaluating proposals. I will tell you, if you look around this room, for all the people that have been here, especially at the director and chief level, that this is the process that staff uses every time majority of the time we bring to you a request for proposal to you. So I'm extremely motivated and happy that you get to go and experience what staff does, what staff experiences every time we go out for a request for proposal. And my hope is that you'll see that, wow, staff really has to put a lot of hard work into selecting somebody before we bring it to you, Mr. Chair and Finance Committee members. After the training, we have another evaluation committee meeting on April 16th. The hope is right there is that we narrow it down to the top 3 firms on that 16th meeting. From there, we'll meet again on May 14th. And that's where hopefully those top 3 firms that you selected will come and give presentations, and then we'll narrow the playing field down, and from there we'll come up with your help. We'll develop a recommendation to take to the full board. The 28th at the board meeting, we present the recommendation, and then shortly after that, contract award. This is the evaluation criteria in a nutshell that I'm bringing before you for recommendation. It's very, very similar to the evaluation criteria that was used last time we went out for auditing. Number 1, firm's qualifications, experience, and background, 200 points. Partners, supervisory and staff experience, 275 points. The audit approach, which is critical, is 325 points. And then the last one you see down there is price. Do not be alarmed, you will not be reviewing price. The only thing that I would ask you respectfully to be evaluating is the technical proposals. The price, procurement has a platform that we use, Bonfire, and there's an algorithm that helps us determine based on the ranking, based on the prices that were submitted. So price isn't one of those things that traditionally we do not allow the evaluation committee members to evaluate. So I got my Get Smart, and they're all in the cone. And that means the cone of silence. You might have firms that might try to reach out to you when they're watching this stream on YouTube. Please do not contact them. Please do not contact them. If they have any questions, they're to be directed to myself. Now, I will tell you that I am not the contracting officer for this. The contracting officer for this procurement is my deputy director, Mr. David Hensler. The project manager for this solicitation is the director of finance, Ms. Julie Lupus. We are here to assist you through this process, and I can't stress it enough how sincere I am for in that regard. So once again, Mr. Chair, the action item that I bring before you is recommend approval of the evaluation criteria for the auditing services RFP 25-240381. If there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them for you.
Thank you, Al.
Oh, sorry, Chair.
Chris?
Yes, I had some questions.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. What are they gonna audit? Exactly.
I'll defer to Debbie and Julie for that.
Thank you, Commissioner. They review our financial statements and go through, take a look at our internal controls. They also they do an audit of all our federal and state grants that we have to make sure that we're in compliance with everything. In addition, I'll let Julie talk about the NTD piece of it.
The NTD report, which is submitted yearly, also gets audited by the,
MPD?
NTD, National Transit Database Report, and it gets submitted to Congress.
Okay.
So they will also be auditing that.
Will they be doing any audits on our routes and riderships on our routes or anything like that?
No, that is their more financial and internal control based. But we do have specialized consultants that we came to the committee and board with 3 years ago now?
About 3 years ago,
About
yes.
3 years
Yes,
ago now, that we can choose and select from to do specialized things outside of financial scope.
Mhm.
So that is
All
something
under
we
the
have.
audit. All under the audit, all under the umbrella of the
Not
audit?
under this, but we
Okay,
have
got
other
it,
consultants that we can cherry pick from, no pun intended.
Can we ask them to add things to their proposal, like, maybe we'll do this with you if we want to?
That is something that would fall under this optional elements of unpredictability. There are things that we can add to that. That would be at Debbie and Julie's discretion. But this solicitation right here is primarily for financial auditing.
And will it be for multiple years?
Yes, good question, very good question. The term of this contract that I'm proposing is a 2-year base with 3 one-year options, which will be a 5-year contract, for a total of 5 years.
Okay, and we're not gonna see the cost? You're not gonna share with us the cost per proposal?
I misspoke. You will see the cost. It's just you will not be evaluating the cost.
Okay.
We'll know the cost, but it's not one of our evaluation
Okay.
criteria is what I'm getting at, right?
Correct, well said,
It's an
sir.
automatic
We just,
system for
Uh-huh,
the lowest price gets the full 200 points, and then proportionally Al handles that one.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
alright, just learning how this,
do you have any more questions for Al?
Yeah, I have
Oh,
another question.
go
Yeah, so I'll just follow up on that question on the evaluation of price. I get the fact that really you want us to focus on the evaluation of the technical factors, essentially the approach management and those are the big ones. Yeah. But I don't know how you evaluate that without actually evaluating the price too.
I hear what you're saying, and I understand where you're coming from, Commissioner. In my over 25 years of being a procurement professional, when the evaluation committee members, when they start looking at price, first thing they do is gravitate to that price. That's what everybody gets fixated on, is the cost. And they start looking at that more so than the technical merits of it. Additionally, according to the Florida statute, price cannot be one of the majority factors. If you see, it's right in line with the qualifications of the firm. And that is something that is something that's in line with the Florida statute, that, hey, price cannot be one of the most highest valued evaluation criteria. You'll see the pricing from all the firms, It's just that my respectful and humble request of you, committee members, is that you score the technical part, and then when we come to the evaluation committee meeting, then all the pricing and all of that will be shared with you at that time. But I don't, in my experience, that the evaluation committees, they stick strictly to the technical portion versus the price. And there in Bonfire, there's an algorithm, as Brad spoke to. The firm with the lowest price, they get awarded the maximum 200 points. And then thereafter, is incremented down. I am not saying, or what I'm not suggesting is that the lowest price this is not a bid. So let's say if somebody did put in a bid of $100,000, I'm just throwing an arbitrary number, and that's the lowest price. By no means am I suggesting that we go with the lowest price firm at all. That is the furthest thing from what I'm trying to articulate.
Yeah, no, and I get that. But it's clear from the way that you're establishing your evaluation criteria that the certain factors are more highly weighted and higher in precedence than other factors. So firm qualifications and price are equal, but when you combine what you were asking us to do, the technical part, the audit, the supervisory staff experience and qualifications, all those are rated significantly higher than price. And then just a recommendation, and I don't know what the statutory language is, but the recommendation I would have is that you establish specific criteria for your procurements. Best value. Best value would be defined as your technical factors being more highly rated than your price. Lowest price technically acceptable. That's, then a determination in getting into that lowest price scenario that you referenced. But I'm not, you're asking us to evaluate the proposal, and if the criteria is such that we're evaluating only the technical, then that's fair, but I think we're missing a component here, because one technical approach will not necessarily equal another technical approach, and then price does become a deciding factor. So that's my feeling, so.
Thanks.
Hey, okay, we mentioned that the committee, and I assume the board, will be able to see the price of the proposals. Will the committee and the board be able to see the points that the Bonfire algorithm assigned to a proposal before we make decisions on them?
I would tell you, thank you for that question, and I think it's a very relevant question. And the short answer to that is absolutely yes.
So if we disagree with that, we can incorporate that into our final decision, it sounds like.
If that's the will of the committee, then that's what could be done at that time, yes, sir.
No, that's a good question.
That's a very good question, and I'm appreciative of it.
Any additional questions for Al? Barbara?
So I know over the years in procurement and contracts, DEI has been considered as far as that firm, right? We don't have that in there anymore, right?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Great. Brad?
So, and just to be clear, as Al said, this is the process we do for everything that we buy, but the Florida statute requires, in this specific instance, for the auditor, I guess because they don't want the box in the henhouse, us selecting our own auditor, the finance committee of the board has to be the evaluation committee. So Al, as the schedule shows, today, the selection committee, pick the evaluation criteria. This is essentially what we had before. If you think we should increase the value of price a little bit or not, you can do that. We have to establish that today, then he'll issue the RFP out to the world. March, Finance Committee, you'll come in here. I think the proposals will just have come in. He's going to hand you these lovely stacks of auditing firm proposals that are so interesting to read. They will be great for you. And then April, Finance Committee, you're going to discuss it. Al and David are gonna lead you through a discussion where you give the points to your firms and then narrow it down to the top three. May, Finance Committee is then you get to interview the top three firms and pick one to recommend to the board.
Yeah, and I appreciate that explanation, and no way am I suggesting that we need to add or increase the evaluation weighting of price in this. I think best value is the way to go, and I'll give an example. When we did this for the city of Dunedin, I mean, it was the technical merits of the proposal are much more important, but to baseline the technical offering of any specific firm, you need to understand what a highly rated technical proposal cost relative to another one that is also meets the criteria and is compliant in terms of price. So that's where price becomes a deciding factor. I think the way that the points are set up, I think that's the right way to do this. But that's just more kind of in terms of providing a piece of this. But it sounds to me, and maybe what we're talking about here is that I don't think is a evaluation source selection committee that we should be getting into the nitty-gritty of the price. We just really need that bottom line.
Yes, sir.
That's it. And so that's my comment.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Do I have a motion to approve the auditing services criteria?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, thank you, committee members. Look forward to working with you.
Likewise. Next up, Darden Rice, Chief Planning and Community Affairs, and Debbie Leah, CFO, outline the plans of overseeing the Cross Bay Ferry. So that'd be interesting.
Good morning, members of the Finance Committee. My name is Darden Rice. I'm our Chief Planning and Community Affairs Officer. Debbie Leos and I want to update the Finance Committee this month on one of our planned services for fiscal year '25, which is the Cross Bay Ferry. Before I get started real quick, just want to say welcome to our new Finance Commissioner, Commissioner Scherer. A big congrats again to Commissioner Barbara Hazelton for your nomination to the Florida Transportation Commission. And a congratulations to my boss, our CEO, who was named by Tampa Bay Business Journal as one of the top 100 business leaders in the Tampa Bay region. And I'm thrilled to be the project manager for the Cross Bay Ferry project. Like you, I once sat on the board, I was once an elected official, but what I really love is just being here at PSTA and having the opportunity to work on policies and projects that draw together so many different types of people and perspectives. And it's an art and it's a science, but I love bringing together different people to work on important projects that have a big impact on our region. It's not easy, but it's completely worthwhile, and I love working with all of you. There's no action needed today, but we are happy to answer any questions, of course, about this since last week. The Hart Board of Directors decided to defer any action on transferring a federal grant to purchase a passenger ferry vessel. And the Hillsborough County Commission is scheduled to discuss this issue at their next board meeting on March 5th. Okay. So with the Cross Bay Ferry service, I do want to be very clear. The ferry service that we are talking about today is the intercity service between the city of Tampa and the city of St. Petersburg. This is the existing contracted service that operates between the two cities. This has nothing to do with South Hillsborough County connecting to Apollo Beach. For the past 7 years, this service has been serving as a pilot project. And we've learned a lot from this pilot project. We've learned a lot of positive things. Our ridership has been growing during this pilot period. And I want to tell you about some other efforts underway to expand this project. So you may have heard of the idea that was considered previously and then rejected by the Hillsborough County Commission for a ferry route between South Hillsborough and MacDill Air Force Base. That was rejected and will not be considered by PSTA. We also learned last fall that Hillsborough and Hart received a 2001 federal grant to purchase a passenger ferry vessel rather than to borrow one from Boston like our current service does. But this grant has never been implemented, and there are no intentions by Hart to implement this grant. And so this grant is subject to lapse in 2027 to go back to the US DOT, and it would be a loss from our region. And it would be these funds, almost $4 million, would be provided to a different city for a different passenger ferry vessel system. Finally, the Hillsborough County contract with HMS Ferries and their boat from Boston ends this coming September. So ever since PSTA was approached by the funding partners of Hillsborough County, the city of Tampa, the city of St. Petersburg, PSTA has been very careful and very respectful of all of the issues in developing our plan for overseeing a new contracted ferry operation between St. Pete and Tampa. And this proposed Cross Bay Ferry service, as you recall, has been something that we have brought forward to this board numerous times. It's been part of our new services package that was presented and approved by the board. It's also been a part of our legislative priorities, again, reviewed and approved by our board. So this is a brand new day. No longer a pilot program. This new ferry service that would start in October of this year would reflect today's leadership, today's Hillsborough County Commission, today's PSTA board, today's Hart board. And with PSTA's expertise in overseeing contracted services, we would propose a pretty new and much more efficient ferry operation with the new contract than with the current service we're experiencing now during the pilot period. Our goal is to provide better service, lower subsidies, so that people have more choices to connect across the bay. Our proposed service would actually be very similar to the Clearwater Beach ferry service. A contracted operation, we would use the grant-funded boats to lower the operating cost, and we would lower the subsidies while improving the service. So at this point, I do look forward to hearing more of your questions, but at this point in our presentation, I'm going to hand this over to our CFO, Debbie Leos, and we look forward to your questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Darden. And one of the things I'd like to point out as we take a look at this is PSTA has had successful experiences with overseeing operations that are contracted out. We have a lot of experience related to that. Now, just like the Clearwater Ferry, we actually have a very special opportunity here to be able to use grant funds to purchase boats that a private entity would operate. And in doing so, we feel very strongly there's a potential for having greater cost efficiencies with the Cross Bay Ferry. Now, I know that there's differences between the Clearwater Ferry and the ferry service that goes between Tampa and St. Pete. However, when we take, where's Jacob when I need you? When we take a look at the costs up here, when we take a look at the Clearwater Ferry, which was competitively competed, that contractor is only charging us $87 an hour. Now, why is that? That is because the city of Clearwater was able to have a grant to pay for their boats. So in essence, the contractor is only paying for the crew, repairs, maintenance, insurance, etc. They don't have to worry about the payments for boats. So when we take a look at what the Cross Bay Ferry is charging right now on a per hour basis, that's 5 times as much. So as Darden mentioned, our goal is to have cost efficiencies related to this. So what has to happen next for that to happen is Hart has to agree to give us the grant. And upon agreeing to give us the grant, we would go ahead and we would purchase the boats. We would be able to go ahead and include that in a bid or RFP for operational services. And what we expect to see is lower costs, so cost efficiencies. And what that means is for our funding partners, they're going to have less subsidies. So even though those are great benefits, my favorite part of this slide is that when you take a look, PSTA will have no funds invested in this. We're able to structure the grant if it's brought over to us, so that there is no cash match for us to put in there. In addition, there's no liability. We'll structure the leases such that all the liability is transferred to the operator. So again, no cost and no liability. So those are my favorite parts of this slide in addition to all the benefits. What has to happen next is Hart has to want to give us this grant. And if they don't, what will end up happening, as Darden mentioned, is this money will go back to the federal government and it will go to another ferry service in another city. And that's fine, it just won't give us the cost efficiencies that we expect. We will still go out for service, for a solicitation, for operating the service for the Cross Bay Ferry. However, if they go ahead and approve giving us the grant, we will work with USDOT on getting the final approval. And throughout this whole process, from the time we found about this grant, we have been in constant contact with FTA. So I feel confident we'll get the approvals we need on that, and we will be able to move forward to purchase the boats, to do the services, save money for our partners, and I don't know what else more I can say other than it could be a very good news story for the region. And with that, Darden and I will take any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah,
Go ahead,
if you
Matt.
don't
Yes,
mind.
Commissioner.
I understand the service right now is seasonal. Is the goal to have it year round?
It's actually, this year it is year round.
It is already,
And the
okay.
goal is to continue that, and the goal is also incidentally, because you represent the city of St. Pete, we've heard loud and clear that the dock needs to come back to the Vinoy Basin.
Yeah, I support that. And to clarify, is it Hart or the Hillsborough Commission or both that need to approve the transfer?
Just Hart.
Yeah.
Just Hart. So wasn't it the Hillsborough County Commission that delayed action on it and hasn't?
Hillsborough County Commissioners who sit
On
on
Hart.
Hart,
Okay.
and then the Hillsborough County Commission will meet as a body on March 5th.
Thank you.
I had a
Go ahead.
question. Thank you, Chair. What's the boat cost?
Oh, a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's about a $4.3 million grant, and it covers possibly two vessels or 2 boats. So those are significant costs that someone we would be looking to bring on would have to bear, because someone, like right now, they're out of Connecticut, the HMS somewhere?
Boston.
They might not have just an extra boat hanging around to bring down to Florida. So I think this is a really good game changer for having the boats available for someone to operate who could then provide qualified expertise, crew, et cetera.
And what do we gotta do to get the boat to go actually to downtown St. Pete again? I mean, right now it's parked at the Coast Guard station, basically.
Yeah.
And that, we're losing all that marketing, you know, I love watching it come in and out of the downtown St. Pete, always loved that.
You're absolutely right, Commissioner. We've been speaking pretty regularly with City of St. Pete officials. They're looking, last I heard that they did have a solid contact finding at least a temporary dock to bring back to the Vinoy Basin while they look for funds to build a new dock. That would probably be, it was originally part of the pier plan and then never happened, so they will work on building a permanent dock. They do have all the permitting with the Army Corps of Engineers, all of that's been taken care of.
Okay. Good.
Question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanna understand the workflow here, cause it's a little bit confusing. All right, so HART is allowing us basically to write the grant or structure. What's the difference?
Okay, the grant has already been granted, it's with HART. The first step has to be HART has to send an email or a letter to FTA saying if they agree to transfer the grant to PSTA. So it's just a transfer. USDOT
The grant
has
funds,
to,
the grant funds.
grant funds.
Okay,
USDOT has to give their blessing, and then we just move forward. We'll put it under grant.
is it FTA that's providing the funds for this?
It's under a USDOT grant.
You, okay, all right. And then.
May I just?
Sure.
So what's happening right now between HART and PSTA is called the local decision. FTA does not have a dog in this fight. Once FTA is presented with HART's, like acknowledging, hey, we are changing the sponsor of the grant, not the scope, but the sponsor, and they see that PSTA is willing to accept, then FTA gets into the mix, and as Debbie said, it goes up the chain of command and down the chain of command,
Okay,
back to PSTA.
so no cost to PSTA, this is just a matter of administration of the funds.
Correct,
Okay.
it's who sponsors the grant.
Okay,
So PSTA would be the new sponsor of the grant.
okay, and then another follow-on would be, what would HART's incentive be to do it this way?
Well, I think number one, they don't have a desire to continue forward with it.
Okay,
We are already operating, just started the Clearwater Ferry Service, so this is already coming in within our wheelhouse. We have no issue to be able to bring this money, you know, into the region. It'll help to generate money back to the region as well.
yeah, this is great, and so the funds, what would we use that grant money to pay for then?
The boat,
The
boat or
okay.
boats, yeah, depending on,
Thereby lowering the operating cost for the vendor and
for the funding
for the
partners.
funding partners and ultimately to PSTA as well.
Right, and like
Oh.
I said, once we get all this rolling, and it usually takes about 2 years, but FTA will take all the miles, et cetera, and put this into their formula, and it will generate more money back into our area as far as grants go, as far as formula grants go.
Yeah, this sounds like an awesome program.
Yeah.
Anybody else? We move on? Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner?
Oh,
Yes. So I followed this over the years and maybe some of the others, you know, just simply hadn't. But I know originally, I think it was Mayor Kreisman presented this originally to the county commission as a way to reduce traffic on the bridge for commuters. And that did not pan out. And it has turned out to be, and Darden, I know that you're excited about the project, so I don't mean to be a downer on it. But even HART's trying to walk away from it, and I think that it has turned into a way to get to the ball games and so forth, and kind of a party boat. And I use that term lightly, but I mean, I've read it. So just the fact that the usage of the boat is, and you can tell by the times and days that it's used, that's the purpose. And also, I've owned a boat before, and there's nothing great about owning boats. 2 good days, and so the thought that comes to mind is maintenance of the boat, repairs of the boat, of a $2 or $3 million boat, I can't even imagine. And that when it's all said and done, it's almost like Uber. It might be cheaper to pay the $4.50 an hour and have all that on somebody else. And saying that we have experience in the ferry business is 1 month old.
True.
So I'm sorry to be, and I don't mean to be, a problem. But I just think that even I remember Janet Long saying they don't want anything to do with the boats anymore on the county commission. And so I just throw these things out to people who may not know about these factoids. Am I wrong on these things? Have I said anything that's not correct?
I think you're correct, Commissioner. There was a lot of controversy about this ferry project, especially I would say a couple of years ago, when there was a whole effort to expand it over in Hillsborough. And the service was going back and forth between St. Pete and Tampa, and yes, it was primarily the ridership is primarily on the weekends, and to Tampa Bay Lightning hockey games, as well. That's very popular time that people use to go back and forth, but they have equal, 50% of the ridership at least goes to St. Petersburg. I mean, still evening,
Well,
people going to
yeah,
restaurants and stuff,
Same thing.
but they come to St. Pete. That is all being proposed to be changed. The cost of that, by having this company from Boston bring the boat down, bring the cruise down, put the cruise in a hotel, and from Boston to run this boat back and forth, to me, I share your concern. It is very expensive. And then the cities came to PSTA and said, well, hey, our contract is ending. Would you guys be able to bid it out? I was like, well, okay, we can look into this. And then to see the change that we were able to, when we did the RFP for the Clearwater Ferry, to get that much lower price, because the state of Florida provided funding to the city of Clearwater to buy them 2 boats that they're using for that ferry service. Just seems like that is the only way to get this service, the Crossbay Ferry, down to a reasonable price, and the fares, the cost to ride the ferry is significantly higher. It's $12 each way, and plus they have concessions on the vehicle. This could hopefully maybe even get to be a no subsidy service, that there would be no ongoing subsidy, that the ferry operator would get the price down so that it would be little to no subsidy for the cities of Tampa, Hillsborough, and St. Pete. I mean, I know that's their goal. The concern that you raise about having PSTA have own boats and have some kind of major expense or liability is one that I shared, and I've shared with all the partners, and emphasized to them that PSTA is an administrator of this program. They got this grant from the feds, and we're happy to administer it, and Al is willing and able to do a procurement in a compliant way, but we need to put all the liability on the contractor for these boats. Once we buy them, we're gonna lease them to the contractor, and then it's fully their responsibility. I've just recently been asked questions, well, what happens if it burns up in the middle of the Tampa Bay? And what if the contractor leaves and just abandons it? Well, but we're gonna have to have performance bonds in the contract to force them to deal with it. We could always, if the service fails or the nobody wants it anymore, then we can sell the boats.
Tried that myself.
Well,
I have a boat for sale.
Let me talk to you about that, I'd love to have another one.
one advantage is if we sell it,
Day you buy it, the day you
at
sell
least
it.
the current rule is, we whatever we get for it, we have to just give back to the feds. So, and maybe an incentive to sell it at a very discounted price. But, let me assure the committee, that we would, as Debbie said, we do not want any liability for this. We wanna be an administrator of this program, for the cities, and that's it.
I have a complicated emotional attachment to boats, so that
Unless
Once
we
they
get
catch
something
on
else,
fire,
we
it's
move on to
over.
the next
Mine got on
subject.
fire.
If you don't mind.
Oh, go right ahead.
I've heard funding partners used here. Would PSTA be solely liable for the maintenance on the ship, or is it spread amongst the funding partners?
We would write a rock solid contract so that the private contractor would be responsible for all maintenance, all
Okay.
insurance, everything related to the boat.
Okay, got it.
And then, so, I mean, they would obviously put that in their price. They would bill.
But how would that shake out to the $4.50 an hour now?
Well, I still think it'll go down. I think it'll go down because there'll be more competition. There'll be, that will make the price go down, and they won't have to do the initial outlay of $4 million. The boat that's out there today is, I've been told, around $2 million, and they're billing the cost of that to the partners. That's in that $400.
Last question, if you don't mind. How long have we been doing year-round service on the ferry?
Just this year,
As of January? Or,
correct.
okay. So then it seems to me like we don't have really good data on the potential for the ferry to be a commuter trip as opposed to if it's only seasonal, it seems like of course it's not gonna be a commuter service.
Correct. We're hoping that with the new service and negotiating higher frequency and better span of service, that we'll be able to see that, this foundation that's built on the recreational trips on the weekends and Friday nights and Thursdays, hoping that that's a foundation to build upon for possible commuter service. But so far, that flexibility, we just haven't been able to get that with the incumbent service.
Got it, thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Appreciate the input, good reports. Next up, Devin Deal, Planning and Data Analyst. Updates on our changing ridership.
Thank you, Dick. Good morning, Finance Committee. My name is Devin Deal, Planning and Data Analyst Manager. Today I'm gonna talk about weekend ridership. So Commissioner Scherer, I think you asked the question when Al was presenting on the audits, if we audit ridership. While it does not happen in that audit, the effort that PSTA has been undertaking for the past year and a half, 2 years in the Connected Community Bus Network is functionally an audit of our routes, of our ridership, and of the efficiency of our system and how we can better allocate that. And one of the key cornerstones that has come out of the bus plan is national travel patterns have sort of shifted since pre-pandemic. And there is less of a demand for the commuter weekday service, though that is still high demand on transit. And there is more of a shift nationally to higher demand for weekend service that maybe wasn't there before the pandemic. And there's a few reasons for that we'll dig into in this presentation. So first of all, I wanna kind of set the stage here with comparing fiscal year 19 ridership pre-pandemic to what that looks like today, post-pandemic. So in blue, that is our fiscal year 19 ridership, broken out by the average daily rides on a weekday, on a Saturday, and on a Sunday. In orange, you see those same numbers post-pandemic in fiscal year 24. What we see here is that weekday ridership has only recovered to about 75% of pre-pandemic levels. Saturday ridership has recovered better than weekdays, it's a little over 80%, and Sunday ridership has nearly fully recovered. This trend in ridership not fully recovering, it's a national trend in transit. It's been a shift since COVID. A lot of the ridership that was lost during the pandemic hasn't necessarily returned on weekdays, and when it has returned, the demand is less consistent for that kind of peak rush hour weekday service that we've typically had. So in the Connected Community Bus Network, I'll explain a little bit of that more. What you see in this graph here, this is our average weekday ridership by trip hour. The orange line coincides with the axis on the left. That is our average daily rides per hour, and the blue bars are our trip count. the number of trips that we run for each hour of service. This is our weekday service, and what you see here is you see those typical AM, PM peaks and weekday ridership that we're used to, and you also see that we schedule additional service for those weekday AM and PM peaks. Pre-pandemic, we actually returned to pre-pandemic service levels, I believe last year. So these trips that we're running were to meet the pre-pandemic demand. But pre-pandemic, those orange bars were significantly higher, roughly 25% higher across the daytime, peaks and throughout the rest of the day. And so one thing we're looking at is taking this peak service that you see here and reallocating that to weekends. On a fixed budget, we can't obviously add more new weekend service without taking it away from somewhere else. And based on our analysis, we've seen that the loads that we encounter during weekdays, especially in those peak service, when we run extra buses on routes like the Route 18, like the Route 34, to meet that pre-pandemic demand, they don't necessarily have loads that indicate that they need those extra buses out there. And so this is the same graph in the same scale. Rides on the left and the orange line represents average daily rides per hour. The blue bars coincide with trip counts per hour. On Saturdays, you see much flatter service and the ridership kind of follows that. We also see a similar trend on Sundays. On Sundays, we have about 1/3 of the service that we do on typical weekdays, but half the ridership of a weekday. Sundays are actually our most productive day for ridership, and we measure productivity in passengers per revenue hour. We carry the most passengers per revenue hour on Sundays. Saturdays are pretty on par with weekdays, but again, Saturday and weekdays are lower than our productivity on Sundays. And this is the 3 ridership bars from those graphs just put into one graph so you can see how a weekday in blue stacks up against a Saturday in orange versus a Sunday in green. This is the average daily rides per trip hour. And again, what you see is that we definitely have higher ridership on weekdays. There is still that peak ridership during rush hour when people are going to work, from work, things like that. And during on most of our normal routes, we have more service scheduled on a weekday than we would on a Saturday or on a Sunday because historically there was more demand for that service on a weekday. We have a few routes in our system that we run consistent service 7 days a week, no matter the day. And those trends are very different from what we see here. So this is the Sunrunner. We have weekday ridership in blue, Saturday ridership in orange, Sunday ridership in green. The first thing you see is that Saturday ridership exceeds weekday ridership on the Sunrunner. This is not a normal trend for the rest of our fixed route systems, or for the rest of our fixed routes in general. But on routes where we run that consistent 7-day-a-week service, this is a trend that we're starting to see. Our Saturday ridership is outperforming weekday in some instances, and then our Sunday is pretty on par with weekday ridership. We have the Suncoast Beach Trolley that also runs consistent service 7 days a week. That travels from Park Street in Clearwater down to 75th and Gulf in St. Pete Beach. This follows similar trends. We see that Saturday ridership outperforms weekday ridership, and Sunday is on par with weekday ridership. And these stack up very differently from that fixed route graph initially. We have the Central Avenue Trolley that runs from Grand Central in St. Petersburg down to downtown St. Pete along Central Avenue. We again see similar trends. Weekday does outperform the weekends on the Central Avenue Trolley, but Saturdays and Sundays are much more on par with weekday ridership than we would see on a normal fixed route. We have a few other examples. We don't get hourly ridership from Jolly Trolley, so this is broken out a little separately, but this is our weekday ridership in blue, Saturday ridership in orange, Sunday ridership in green on our 3 Jolly Trolley routes. And again, you can see that Saturday and Sundays are either typically on par with or outperforming the weekdays in ridership. And so this is similar to trends that we see nationwide. This isn't just happening in Pinellas County. We see it in other cities and other networks. And whenever they try to dedicate more service to weekends, they see ridership dividends. We have Oklahoma City. They had no Sunday service. They introduced that at roughly 50% of the level of their weekday service, and they got 40% of that ridership on Sundays. Spokane Transit in Washington, similar numbers, a 17% service hour increase on Saturdays, had a 25% ridership increase on Saturdays. A 27% increase on Sundays, had a 40% ridership increase on Sundays. And we again see similar trends in Utah Transit Authority and in Central Ohio Transit Authority. And at PSTA, we also have an anecdotal example. We have the Sunrunner that travels along the Central Avenue corridor. And pre-pandemic and pre-Sunrunner, that corridor was pretty well served with Route 18, one of our core routes, and the Central Avenue trolley. And there was really good, it was one of the higher ridership corridors in our system. We launched the Sunrunner, and we saw a 60% ridership increase in that corridor, which was already one of the better served and higher ridership corridors in the county. And so some of the key takeaways is post-pandemic trip patterns nationally have changed, especially for those weekday commuters. You know, if you were maybe someone working at a call center or a job that could be done remotely, a lot of times now when you would have rode the bus 10 times a week, 5 boardings to work, 5 boardings when you're coming home from work, those people are often working hybrid schedules, and we see what would have been 10 rides a week is now 4 or 6, but transit is still supporting that same job. And service-based economies like ours, where we have those service workers who are working on the beaches, working in downtowns, who typically can't afford to live where they work, they have to rely on our service to get them there. And currently, we turn off a lot of routes on Saturdays, even more on Sundays. And if you don't live in one of those key corridors that are well served, it's difficult to get a route to get you there to get to work. And also, surveys to our riders have consistently indicated that there is demand for this. In our last bus plan pre-pandemic, actually, we heard from riders that they wanted better weekend service, longer weekend spans, and more consistent weekend routes. In the bus plan that we're working on right now, post-pandemic, we heard the exact same thing. Our riders want better weekend service. They want more routes to run on the weekends. They want longer spans of service because they're not working a typical Monday to Friday. Our service workers are working Wednesday to Sunday or more sporadic shifts throughout the week that need that service 7 days a week. And so with that, consistency matters. One of the cornerstones of the community bus plan is trying to create a more connected, a more consistent network to maximize that efficiency and maximize the ridership in our system. And that is why we are looking at shifting some of that peak weekday service in the community bus plan to weekends to better serve that demand that is there nationally and that we believe is there for us. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Devin. Great report as always. Anybody have any questions for him? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next up, we'll have Julie Lupus, Director of Accounting, who's gonna walk us through the monthly money trail.
Good morning, I'm Julie Lupus, Director of Accounting. We're taking a look at December's financials today, and we finished with a 42.8 million net surplus, which was 3.1 million unfavorable to the budgeted surplus. Revenue is 3.7 million unfavorable to budget, driven by timing differences in property taxes and state grant revenue. Expenses are 560,000 favorable to budget, driven by timing differences in fringe benefits and service expenses. Turning to the December year-to-date financials, we finished with a 48.5 million net surplus, which was 419,000 unfavorable to the budgeted surplus. Revenue is 2.3 million unfavorable to budget, again driven by property taxes, investment income, and state grant revenue. Expenses are 1.9 million favorable to budget, with almost all categories driving it with very few exceptions on that one. And I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Julie, appreciate it. Any questions?
I did have a question.
Go right ahead, go right ahead.
So we're running a deficit of 3 million for that month. Did that come out of did you fund it out of reserves? How do you fund your deficits?
Debbie?
This is just a 1-month piece of it, so when you look like on a year-to-date basis, we have monies that we carry over from the previous year, knowing that we don't collect property taxes, until around, the end of November, December timeframe. And the way it works, and every finance committee I've ever been on here has always said, Debbie, why can't you just put property tax equal every single month? It doesn't come in that way, and we're not allowed to account for it that way. So what happens is, and we'll get to this, actually kind of it's in your packet for the quarterly reports, is money will come in all at once. I have to set aside that money that comes in for the rest of the year because property tax is our biggest piece of revenue that comes in. So we're not actually having to dip into reserves at this point. I've got money set aside to make sure I get through those first couple months, and now we're into December. So we're fine on that, and it's just the timing of the property tax. When you look at what's driving, as Julie mentioned, the 3.7 million in the month, 2.9 of that is just the timing of the property tax. We have no control over that. It comes, as you well know, from your own municipalities or, the county. It comes in lumps. Just the way it goes.
Well, I figured that, I just
Yeah.
wanted to know how you funded the deficits
Yeah, we've got money that is set there for
somewhere,
that.
okay.
My cookie jars.
Thank you. We'll move on to you now with the quarterly.
All right, in your packet, and for those of you who are new, we do quarterly reports. Last month, we presented a quarterly contract report. This month, along with the financials, we have a variety of reports, including capital projects. In that piece of the packet, we have budget versus actual report, and then details on every single capital project that is active at this point. So if you get insomnia in the middle of the night, you are welcome to read every single one of them. You're welcome to always ask us to present on anything of interest to you. We also include in here a fuel report, and the fuel report has in here, I call it my mark-to-market report. We fix a portion of our fuel. About 2/3 of our fuel is fixed, so that we know that we'll stay for that portion of it within budget. The other piece floats to the marketplace, so I'm buying off of the marketplace for the rest of it. What that allows me to do is to, in times when the price that I fixed, the marketplace is doing better, I'm getting the benefit of that. If I see the marketplace is starting to perform poorly, I have the ability to lock in more to kind of mitigate the risk of the volatile fuel market. So right now, we have an average price per gallon that is $2.37. Our budget is $2.60. So we are actually seeing the market, which is a little bit lower, help us out. Now, one of the things that I did is I took a look back the first quarter of fiscal '24 versus first quarter of fiscal '25 on the fuel. And by diversifying our fleet, we were able to save almost 21,000 gallons of fuel, which equated to around $49,000 worth of savings. Now, our electric costs did go up by about $3,000, but I have a net savings of $46,000. So as we're starting the budget season, and I actually do it every day, I keep up, it's like a little ticker tape parade. I look at the marketplace every single day, and I have other people in my team that also do that, to kind of constantly monitor what's going on with diesel fuel. To ask to see, how do we budget for next year? Do I lock in more, or am I happy where I'm at? Like right now, the marketplace is doing better than what I've locked in at. And I think it's important for me to be transparent to you. Are the decisions that I'm making wise ones? So that's why I call it a mark-to-market report. I'm checking to see how I do. Now, we also have in here investment reports and the reserve report. So we have $101 million worth of investments. We're very uber conservative. Everything is collateralized. There's nothing, zero at risk here. And out of that, we have that set aside into different buckets, if you will. So we've got money set aside for things that are contractually restricted, legally restricted, things that are restricted at the board's discretion, which includes our operating reserves, self-insurance, and capital reserves, as well as, and this is where I set aside money as the money comes in, taking a look at our budget. What money do I have to have set aside to make sure I go through the rest of the year appropriately? So those reports are in there, and then finally, we have a health insurance report that the HR Director, Trish Collins, will present.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's a full table here this morning. My name's Trish Collins. I'm the Director of Human Resources here at PSTA. And this health insurance update is the very last page in your packet attachment for reports. This is a report that I bring quarterly as part of these reports to the Finance Committee. And just as a little bit of navigation on this report, what you're looking at the top is a comparison for the 3 different plans that PSTA offers. This year's performance, 2025, compared to last year's performance in 2024. And then that second chart is all this additional analysis of this year's performance. For those who are maybe newer to our board, PSTA offers 3 different insurance plans. They all offer the same coverage. They all include the same services. The difference is that employees can choose which plan is right for them when it comes to a balance between costs paid every month as your deductible or costs that are paid for the services that you actually use. Our base plan, the middle plan, is our highest enrollment. Nearly 50% of our employees choose that plan, and it accounts for just over 50% of our claims costs. Our high deductible plan is our second highest enrollment. About 34% of our employees choose that plan, and it has a much lower claims cost, accounting for only about a quarter of the claims costs overall. And then lastly, our buy-up plan, that is the lowest enrollment with about 16%. That's the plan that has the highest monthly deductible and the lowest cost for services. Not a lot of our employees choose it, but the ones that do are very passionate about that choice. With about 16% of enrollment, it accounts for 21% of our claims costs. This is as of the end of the first quarter, so it covers October, November, and December of last year. And the average cost per claim in all 3 plans was lower compared to last year. So that's a good thing. We work to try to, of course, we want employees to use their plans, but we try to encourage health, wellness. We have health challenges, health education, promote free preventable services, provide incentives for healthy behavior, and that's a key way that we try to control the claims costs each year. Another key figure on this chart is the rightmost column on the top section, the loss ratio, which is favorable compared to last year. That's essentially how much profit is the insurance company making off of us. And it's a good thing for us when they're making a better profit, because that means that our rates are more likely to stay similar or not see a huge spike, a huge increase in the next enrollment year. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any committee member have any announcements or other business before the committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Next meeting is March 19th, 9 a.m. See you then, folks.
You want a tight ship.
Huh?
You want a tight ship.
I tried.
Started on time,
I
finished
like it.
early.